Hey guys, tonight we're pulling up a chair at one of the most dangerous dinner tables in history. No, not because of a family feud or awkward political debates over dessert, but because your job, dear listener, is to taste every dish before the king does. And if it's laced with poison, well, congratulations. You just saved the monarchy with your face. You wake up in a damp little chamber adjacent to the palace kitchens. It smells like old gravy, wet wood, and something suspiciously like regret. The bed is technically a straw mat, but after a week of use, it feels more like sleeping on broken kindling and hopes. Your back is stiff, your stomach is cautious, and your brain is already doing the math. How many bites will I take today that might kill me? There's no time for morning meditation. You're summoned before the rooster even manages a full crow. A kitchen servant knocks and mumbles something about the Duke's breakfast being a bit rushed today. That's always a red flag. Food made in a hurry has a higher chance of including, let's say, unauthorized seasonings. You trudge into the prep area, where steam clings to the ceiling and condensation drips into bowls of stew like it's a second ingredient. The head cook waves you over with a ladle still dripping lamb fat. You're handed a plate of mystery, some sort of egg based custard, possibly involving fish, definitely involving anxiety. You lift your wooden spoon with the reverence of someone about to conduct a seance. The custard wobbles. You wobble. The room smells of nutmeg and fear. You take the first bite, and you're still breathing for now. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let us know where you're watching from. What time is it for you right now? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You chew slowly, thoughtfully, like someone trying to outwit a murder plot with molars. That's the unspoken art of food tasting. You're not savoring, you're listening. For crunches that shouldn't be there, for sourness that arrives a second too late, for that faint metallic twang that might be nutmeg or nightshade. Historians still argue whether the job of royal food taster was a formal position or just a convenient scapegoat with good digestion. But records do show that in courts from imperial China to Renaissance Italy, someone always stood between a king's meal and a monarch's demise. Usually you. Lucky, lucky you. Your uniform is whatever didn't catch fire in the kitchens last week. An apron stained with yesterday's stew, shoes that squeak with ominous dampness, and sleeves permanently scented with garlic and guilt. Breakfast continues with a cup of wine. Not to enjoy, heavens no, you sip to ensure it wasn't spiked by a disgruntled vintner with access to monkshood. Your lips tingle. Not necessarily poison, could be the poor hygiene of medieval barrels, or the fact that grapes were sometimes crushed with feet that had previously kicked livestock. 1 cup down, 27 items to go. You sit at a little side table, your plate set like an altar. The nobles won't arrive for another hour, but their fate? That's already in your stomach. Most of your meals aren't meals. They're miniature executions that didn't take. Someone once tried to sneak a powdered root into the king's duck pie. He survived. You, however, spent 2 days hallucinating that the fireplace was whispering family secrets. The fireplace still won't look at you. Sometimes you think back to the job ad. Taster needed. Discretion essential. Compensation generous if you live. You were hungry. Not for glory, just actual food. Now you're fed daily, sure, but your relationship with eating is complicated. Every swallow feels like a wager, every burp, a gamble. Oh, and let's not forget the rumors. The court jester says your nose twitches before a bad batch. The steward claims you've developed an immunity to poison. The royal cat, Bastion, just stares at you like he's waiting for you to keel over so he can inherit your corner of the hearth. You finish the final bite of smoked pigeon, a new dish, experimental. That's never comforting. There's no applause, no thank you for not dying, just a nod from the butler and a slow retreat to the tasting room's side alcove where you wait out the next 20 minutes. Because poison rarely announces itself quickly. Sometimes it waits, like a diva. Your stomach gurgles, you clutch your side, but it passes. Just indigestion, or nerves, or both. So far you've survived, but it's not even noon. You lean against the cool stone wall and close your eyes. Briefly, carefully. You don't want to look too relaxed. That's how people get replaced. And in this line of work, replacement usually involves a funeral. You're barely done digesting your first meal, and already someone is shoving another plate under your nose. It's not even your birthday. It's the second breakfast of the nobility. Yes, that was a thing, and it's your job to preach you their privilege, like some kind of royal blender with anxiety. This time, it's a lukewarm stew, thick, brown, vague, the kind of dish that could either nourish a duke or drop him like a bag of old turnips. You poke at it with a spoon, watching as the grease forms lazy shapes on the surface, like a Rorschach test designed by someone who really, really hates your intestines. You take a tentative bite, then a bigger one, then pause. Is that a nut? Historians still debate whether allergies were understood in the Middle Ages, but you don't have to be a scholar to know your throat closing isn't great. You wait, you breathe. The nut is just a texture, not a threat. Crisis averted. Welcome to your daily ritual, identifying ingredients by flavor, texture, and whether or not you immediately see a tunnel of white light. See, in a world before refrigeration, fresh is a very loose term. Spoiled meat gets dressed up with extra herbs. Milk is boiled until it pretends to behave. Fruit is served when it's only mostly fermented. If it smells suspicious, you eat it anyway, because the Duke still wants his pear compote, even if the pear died weird. The kitchen has its own scent, smoke, sweat, cloves, and the distinct tang of something that's been forgotten in a clay pot since last Tuesday. You'd complain, but you're too afraid to inhale deeply. There's a theory that spices were used to cover up bad meat. Some historians agree. Others say that's culinary slander. You're just trying to survive a lamb leg that smells like old shoes and vinegar. Another bowl arrives. Fish this time. Smoked. Probably. Maybe just accidentally left near a chimney for a week. You're halfway through when you hit something chewy. Not fishbone chewy, more surprise chewy. You make a note. Possible sabotage or extremely lazy deboning. Welcome to the gourmet roulette of palace dining. And remember, this isn't just about dying, it's about when. Some toxins work fast. Others take hours, days even. So when something doesn't kill you instantly, you don't celebrate. You just start quietly saying goodbye to your pancreas. The problem is, your job is also public. People watch you eat. Nobles glance your way like you're a canary in a culinary coal mine. If you twitch, they panic. If you sneeze, 3 ladies faint. If you smile too fast, someone accuses you of conspiring with the cook. You can't win. So you learn the art of neutral chewing, calm, composed, emotionless. Your face becomes the Switzerland of facial expressions. Not thrilled, not horrified, just chewing. Once during a summer banquet, the melon slices were served with mint and a thin sauce no one recognized. You took a bite, then blinked once, just once, and four servants dropped their trays and ran. You weren't dying. You just remembered you left a candle burning. But from now on, blinking is off limits. You step away from the table, your hands trembling just slightly, not from poison, from constant vigilance. You've eaten for 3 people, and you haven't even had your own breakfast. Not that it matters. Your meals come later. Cold leftovers, scraps scraped from plates after the real diners are done. The chew marks aren't always yours. You retreat to a corner of the kitchen, where your designated stool is wedged between a barrel of onions and a mop with trust issues. You sit, carefully. Any sudden movement, and someone might assume you're collapsing. Your stomach grumbles. It's confused, full but never satisfied, nauseous, but always expected to endure more. Your taste buds are tired. Your teeth are sore from crunching through mystery crusts. You once bit into something that turned out to be stuffed hedgehog. Not metaphorically, literally. It was served as a delicacy. You cough quietly. Just a little phlegm, probably from the smoked fish, or the powdered saffron, or the constant low-grade dread that follows you like a shadow with garlic breath. The head cook passes by and gives you a thumbs up. You nod. It's not camaraderie. It's more like 2 prisoners acknowledging each other across the yard. And here's the kicker. The nobles think you're the lucky one. You get to eat everything first. Sample delicacies. Enjoy the best meals. But what they don't realize is that you don't taste joy. You taste risk. Flavor is just a vehicle for suspicion. Still, it could be worse. You could be the royal chamber pot boy, or the guy who cleans pigeon coops, or the jester who actually likes his job, which is frankly alarming. So you chew, you swallow, you smile, and you pray because lunch is coming. And today's entree? Pigeon and almond gravy. Again, you're back at it. Third round of the day. Lunch for the Lord's table is being assembled like a battlefield. Ducks glazed in mystery sauces, spiced vegetables that definitely weren't grown in any local garden, and a pie so large it could be hiding a family of squirrels. Or something worse. The kitchen is hotter now. The hearth is roaring, pans are clanging, and the cook is sweating through his third tunic. You, on the other hand, are sweating from the sheer implication of what's about to go into your mouth. The first dish is simple. Boiled barley with herbs. Harmless, right? Except the herbs were recently foraged by an apprentice who can't tell the difference between parsley and, well, deathweed. You ask gently, was this picked from the north side of the wall? The apprentice nods proudly. You nod back, solemnly, and make peace with your ancestors. You eat. 1 spoonful, then 2. Then the mandatory pause. Nothing. Not even a twitch. You're either fine or entering the extremely calm stage of fatal poisoning. Either way, it's lunch. Next up, roast boar in a glaze. Historians still argue whether medieval boar was actually safe to eat or just something they stabbed out of boredom. You slice off a piece. The meat is dense, slightly purple, and has a sheen that no animal should naturally produce. You chew. It's oddly sweet. You hope that's the glaze. Could be honey. Could be fermented plum juice. Could also be someone's failed attempt at a vinegar reduction. The nobles call it sophisticated. You call it iffy. Then comes the pie, a towering construction with a crust so thick it might be load bearing. The rumor is that it contains pigeon, veal, and possibly cherries. You cut a sliver. Steam hisses out like it's been bottling secrets. You scoop a forkful. It smells complex. Not good, not bad. Just like someone tried to make a perfume out of soup. You chew, then feel something odd. Tiny granules. Not sand, not sugar, not bone. Your mind races. Could it be ground glass? There was a case you recall in some forgotten corner of royal gossip where a duke was nearly taken out by a rival who laced his tart with finely crushed window pane. The taster survived. Barely. The culprit? The pastry chef's cousin or goat. Depends who's telling the story. You cough once, not dramatically, just enough. The steward looks over. You give the nod. The "it probably won't kill him" nod. Standard procedure. The truth is, sometimes poison isn't even intentional. Sometimes the meat is undercooked, or the mushrooms are the wrong kind, or someone dropped a toad into the stew and called it aromatic. This is the Middle Ages. Food safety is mostly superstition, a bit of guesswork, and you. You are the food safety system. Historians note that in some courts, tasters were prized possessions, trusted more than knights. In others, they were disposable, replaced faster than dish towels. You're not sure where you fall. One day the queen compliments your bravery. The next, she doesn't remember your name and calls you that nibbly man. You finish the last bite of the pigeon veal cherry abomination. Your jaw hurts. You can't tell if it's from clenching or from something sinister lodged behind your molars. You retreat again to your stool of judgment. You sit. You wait. You feel something. Not pain, not yet. Just a very sudden awareness of your own intestines. That could be normal. Could also be the start of something Shakespearean. You take a slow breath. The steward checks his hourglass. 5 minutes. 10. You're still upright, which, by royal standards, means the food is safe enough to serve to someone who matters more. You nod. They nod back. And just like that, the plates are whisked away to the great hall. Trumpets sound. Nobles clap. Someone mispronounces bouillon with great enthusiasm. You? You just ate enough weird to qualify as a science exhibit, and no one says thank you? You think, maybe, the royal cat appreciates you. He always sits nearby when you eat, watching, waiting, licking his paws like he knows something you don't. Or maybe he's just hoping you'll die, so he can nap on your warm corpse. Cats are complicated. Still, you smile. The lunch service is over. Your tongue remains intact. Your pulse is steady. Your stomach has entered negotiation mode but hasn't yet declared war. You stand, slowly, one more step toward dinner. But before that, there's tea, and someone brewed it from experimental herbs. All good. Tea time. Or, as you've come to call it, the quiet prelude to potential disaster. Unlike the grandeur of lunch or the theatrical terror of dinner, the afternoon tasting is deceptively gentle. Just a few delicate cups, perhaps a tart or two, and a light broth served with enough ceremony to trick you into thinking. This round won't try to assassinate you from the inside out. Today's selection, a cloudy infusion of herbs gathered from the royal garden. You peer into the cup, floating bits of stem, an unidentifiable yellow petal. A single gnat, possibly also part of the recipe. You take a whiff, it smells earthy, warm, like wet hay and overconfidence. The first sip hits your tongue like liquid confusion. Bitter, grassy, then, wait, sweet? That's not a good sign. Poison is famously sweet. So is honey. So is arsenic if the dose is right. Historians still debate whether medieval tea rituals involved actual tea or just whatever plant hadn't been stepped on by a goat that week. In your experience, it's mostly the latter. You take another sip because pretending you trust the tea is part of your job. Internally, though, your survival instincts are doing backflips. One time, you drank something called sleep cordial. You woke up 2 days later to discover you'd missed 3 banquets and someone else had briefly filled your role. He didn't last a week. You reach for the tart. Apple, allegedly. You poke it first. Always poke. The crust is solid but sticky, like someone varnished it with fruit glue. The filling is chunky. Possibly actual apple. Possibly pickled turnip. Hard to say. One bite, chew. Wait. Then comes the flavor journey. Sour. Then sweet. Then, uh-oh. Fizzy? Your eyes widen. You glance up. The steward's watching. You smile. Calm. Neutral. The face of someone who definitely meant to eat fermenting pie. He nods and scribbles something in a ledger. You don't ask what. Probably something like taster still upright, apple tart, possibly cursed. Another sip of tea to wash it down, and you can't help but wonder, how many herbs are in this thing? 10? 15? At least 3 have names like Maiden's Hope or Saint's Whisker. One is definitely just moss. Back in the day, royal herbalists were seen as brilliant or terrifying, or both. They brewed potions, advised kings, and sometimes dabbled in poisons, strictly for educational purposes, of course. You've met the current one. He wears 2 belts, 3 scarves, and carries more dried roots than a forest in winter. Every time he says, "Trust me," you get a new stomach ulcer. Midway through tea, someone brings a side dish. The Duchess insisted, the page says, with a squeaky voice. It's her favorite. Ah, good. Favorites. It's a custard. You hate custard. Because in the medieval world, custard is just an excuse to hide things. Egg, milk, sugar, and surprise. Sometimes nutmeg, sometimes cloves. Once, famously, a small beetle that no one noticed until your throat did. You take a bite. It's smooth. Suspiciously so. The flavor? Sweet. With a metallic aftertaste. You pause. You've tasted this before. Once, during a spring festival, when someone tried to kill the bishop with an overdose of lovage and honey. He survived. Barely. You, meanwhile, spent 14 hours having visions of singing cows and arguing with a pastry. Still, no gagging yet, no dizziness, just a faint tingle in your lips. You file it away in your mental catalog under mildly threatening but not terminal. By now, you've had tea, a tart, a possibly hallucinogenic custard, and 2 cups of herb juice. You've been exposed to more questionable flora than a wandering goat, but your job's not done, because someone always wants one more dish tasted. Try this jelly, the cook says, handing you a trembling blob of red gel on a pewter plate. It's new. Of course it is. It wiggles. You poke it. It pokes back. Made from boiled fruit, animal gelatin, and hope, it quivers on the spoon like it knows it's up to no good. You gulp it down. It's fine. Kind of. Slightly gritty. Possibly from the sugar. Possibly from bone fragments. You pat your stomach. It growls like a discontented bear. Everything inside you is arguing now: the herbs, the tart, the suspicious custard, the wiggle blob. Your digestive tract is staging a protest, but externally, you maintain composure. You smile at the steward. He gives the nod. Tea time is over. You lived again. You head to your corner, curl up behind a sack of onions, and close your eyes for a moment. Not sleep, just a nap adjacent. Enough time to digest your latest round of risks. You whisper a silent prayer to Saint Antacid and prepare for the real event, because dinner's coming. And dinner? Dinner is always theatrical. Dinner, the main event, the royal centerpiece, the part of your day where everything, effort, danger, digestive chaos, reaches its dramatic, gravy laden climax. You're summoned at dusk. Candles are being lit in the great hall. Long shadows stretch over gleaming silver trays, and somewhere a lute plays a minor chord that perfectly matches your internal dread. The cook is in full panic mode. His apron is stained, his hat is missing, and he's muttering something about last time's eel debacle. You pretend not to hear that. Tonight's menu? Ambitious. Stuffed quail, spiced turnips, a meat pie so ornate it has decorative pastry leaves, and something that might be a real feather. And a soup. Always the soup. You're handed a spoon. It's warm, comforting. You take a sip. It's not comforting anymore. The soup tastes odd, sweet, then bitter, then sweet again. You swirl it. It's a reddish brown color with floating herbs that resemble pond scum arranged by an artistic squirrel. There's a hint of cinnamon. Or maybe arsenic's cousin. Hard to say. Your stomach makes a skeptical noise. Still, you drink, because you are the firewall between the monarchy and a very awkward poisoning scandal. Historians still argue whether soup was the easiest way to hide poison. On the one hand, it's liquid and easy to lace. On the other hand, it was often shared, which means one bad bowl could take out half the table. You suspect whoever invented communal soup was either incredibly trusting or deeply chaotic. Now comes the quail. It's been roasted, stuffed, and glazed in something sticky. The head is still on. It's staring at you, judging you. You bite into the thigh. Chewy, possibly undercooked, possibly just quaily. The stuffing is an odd mix of raisins, breadcrumbs, and regret. You chew slowly, mentally cataloging every spice, every temperature inconsistency, every emotional reaction from your nervous system. Then the turnips. You hate the turnips. They're always cold, always oddly crunchy, always seasoned with whatever herb the kitchen had too much of. One bite, and you taste cloves. Another, mint. A third, something that might be soap. The nobles will love it. Then comes the meat pie. This is the showstopper. It's massive. Steam pours from the crust like it's trying to escape. You cut in. Layers of meat spill out. Pork, veal, possibly pigeon. Again. There's also a mysterious purple chunk that no one is willing to identify. You take a bite. You chew. You think about your childhood, your life choices. That time you thought you might become a traveling harpist instead. The meat is rich, greasy. There's a familiar tang that you really hope is wine and not mold. You finish the bite, set your fork down, and wait. No spinning room, no blurry vision, just the usual digestive panic. You give the nod. The food is cleared for the nobles. Trumpets sound. Plates are paraded into the great hall like victorious warriors returning from battle. You lean against the stone wall, half expecting your legs to give out. Not yet, still standing. Then the steward returns with dessert. because of course there's dessert. Today it's a baked pear, soaked in wine and sprinkled with sugar. It's beautiful, fragrant, almost suspiciously perfect. You cut a slice, you chew, and then you taste something wrong. Not deadly, just off, like someone used the wrong wine or forgot to remove the stem. You swallow, you smile, you say nothing. It's the safest option. Pointing out culinary flaws is more dangerous than eating them. By now, the nobles are eating, laughing, complimenting the chef. No one looks at you. No one remembers you. Unless something goes wrong, then suddenly everyone remembers the food taster. You sigh and make your way back to the kitchen, where a small stool and a half-eaten onion wait for your return. Your stomach is full, your nerves are shredded, and your dinner was technically successful, except for the part where you feel like you've swallowed 12 culinary red flags and one experimental turnip. You sit, you breathe, and you whisper, as you do every evening, "Well, that didn't kill me," which is the closest thing you have to a bedtime prayer. You don't sleep after dinner. Not really. You loiter. You loiter near the hearth, pretending to warm your hands. You loiter near the storage room, pretending to count spoons. You loiter near the door to the privy, just in case something unexpected needs to exit you very quickly, because the real danger of food tasting doesn't always strike during the meal. Sometimes it waits, it lingers, like a delayed joke or a long fuse. It's in these hours after the final course, when the nobles are toasting to their own survival and playing dice by candlelight, that your body becomes a silent battleground. A gurgle here, a cramp there, the occasional sensation that your intestines have begun rearranging themselves alphabetically. You pace the floor of the kitchen. The floorboards creak beneath your steps. The same four planks, over and over, like a nervous rat with a culinary death wish. And here's the problem. You can't complain, because if you so much as mention discomfort, the court panics. Was it the custard? Was it the quail? Was it the turnips? I knew it was the turnips. Historians still debate whether any official protocol existed for when a food taster began showing symptoms. Most agree it was something between carry him out discreetly and bury him with the pie crust still in his hand. You know a guy who once fainted an hour after dessert? Just dehydration. But he woke up in a shallow grave because someone jumped to conclusions. He now works as a beekeeper. Less risk, more stings, so you suffer in silence. You breathe through the stomach grumbles, the mild hallucinations, the occasional cold sweat, and you try to look relaxed. You curl up on a small stool, one hand on your middle, the other near a bucket, just in case. The steward passes by and gives a little wave. He's off to bed. Everyone is. The nobles have retired to their absurdly soft feather mattresses, and the servants to their shared bunks and whispered gossip. But you sit and you wait, because the window of doom is approximately 4 hours long. If you're still alive by then, you probably get to do it all again tomorrow. Probably. Your thoughts drift to simpler times, to food that didn't come with existential risk, to apples that were just apples, and not a metaphor for assassination. You remember once being asked to taste an elixir gifted by a traveling merchant. It smelled like licorice and old coins. You took a sip. Your nose bled. Your vision sharpened. You suddenly remembered your grandmother's birthday from age 6. You're still not sure if it was poison or enlightenment. You chuckle softly. Then freeze. Was that a cramp? No, just gas. You hope. You lean your head against the stone wall and try to doze. The warmth of the kitchen is fading now. The fire's dying. A lone pot simmers quietly in the corner. forgotten. It smells like cabbage and fatigue. You hear a rat scurry across the far end of the room. You make eye contact. The rat nods like he too knows what it's like to eat under pressure. There's camaraderie in misery. Eventually, the hourglass tips again. The worst is over. You haven't collapsed. You haven't seen any ghostly figures beckoning you toward the light. Your fingers still move. Your breath is your own. Congratulations. You've survived another day. And just as you begin to feel the first soft edges of real sleep curling in, there's a knock at the kitchen door. A low-ranking footman peeks in. Lord Furnington requests a midnight snack. Just needs a quick tasting. Of course he does. Because why should you sleep? When the whims of a bored nobleman demand an emergency roast pheasant at 1 in the morning, you rise. Your knees crack. Your spine protests. Your stomach groans like it's writing a legal complaint. But you grab your spoon and you shuffle back into the firelight because you, dear taster, are nothing if not professional and exhausted. So very, very exhausted. You shuffle like a corpse with paperwork. The kind of walk that says, I was supposed to be unconscious by now, but instead, here you are, headed back to the kitchen for midnight pheasant surprise. The surprise, of course, being that you're still employed. The footman leads you down a side corridor, barely lit by torches that smell like sadness and mutton grease. You pass through the servant's entrance into a side pantry that looks like it hasn't been cleaned since the last plague. And there it is, the pheasant, roasted, mildly steaming, and perched on a plate too ornate for this hour. It's garnished with something green and oily. You ask, what's this glaze? The cook squints. Could be parsley, could be ink. Excellent. You sit on the closest barrel, take your bite, and start chewing with all the enthusiasm of someone reading legal terms and conditions aloud. It's dry. Not just regular dry, Sahara meets fireplace dry. Your molars are filing complaints. You try not to choke on the floury aftertaste. The seasoning is charitably experimental. There's a spice that tastes like licorice and suspicion. Another that reminds you of the time you accidentally licked a fence post. You swallow, barely. Then comes the garnish. A mushy bit of preserved fruit, likely an apricot in its past life. It squishes like regret and sugar syrup. You feel a tingle at the back of your throat. Not alarming. Not yet. Just a gentle brush of something acidic and bold enough to ask for directions. You look up at the cook, who is hovering too closely for comfort. I added a hint of something new, he says, eyes gleaming. A root they used in a monastery in the Alps. Very invigorating. You want to ask if the monks are still alive. But instead, you nod. You wait. So far, no seizures, no hallucinations, just fatigue, skepticism, and a growing concern that you're developing the world's most specific form of indigestion. Historians still argue whether nobles trusted their tasters or just used them as plausible deniability on legs. In your case, it's definitely the latter. Lord Furnington once asked if your tongue had insurance, then laughed, alone. You scrape the plate for a few more morsels, mostly for show. You take another sip of the provided palate cleanser, which tastes like wet bark and cough syrup. Then you smile. Safe enough, you say. The plate is whisked away. Lord Furnington is summoned from his midnight bath or bloodletting or whatever he does at this hour. You shuffle back toward the kitchen, but not before overhearing him say, I swear I saw the taster flinch. Was that a flinch? No. No, it wasn't. That was your face reacting to the 6th consecutive hour of terror and roasted bird. You return to your stool. Again. And it's then just as your body starts to settle, that the weirdest sensation begins. Your tongue tingles, mildly, like it's forgotten how to tongue. You sit very still, one eye twitching. Could be exhaustion, could be the monk root, could be the last cherry tart finally achieving sentience. You wait, you breathe. You remind yourself that once, in King Charles's court, a taster reported a tingling tongue before collapsing dramatically, only to discover later that it was a loose filling reacting with cheap wine and a copper spoon. Science is a cruel friend. Eventually, the sensation passes. You're not dead, just lightly haunted. You lean back against a barrel of pickled onions and stare at the ceiling. There's a cobweb shaped like the Holy Roman Empire. You name the spider Gregory. You close your eyes. And then, just before sleep wins, your stomach rumbles with the angry resonance of 12 confused dishes trying to negotiate peace treaties. You sigh. You wonder, briefly, if the royal beekeeper would consider an apprentice. And then finally, mercifully, you drift off. You wake up to the sound of a pot exploding. It's not a metaphor, it's literally a pot exploding. Apparently, someone put too much barley and not enough logic into the morning stew. The lid flew off, a spoon embedded itself in the ceiling beam, and now steam is pouring across the kitchen like it's trying to reenact a battle scene from an opera. You blink yourself upright. Your back cracks in 3 distinct languages. Your mouth tastes like burned pear and distrust. Gregory the ceiling spider is gone, either relocated or vaporized. A new day, a new round of edible Russian roulette. You're handed a bowl before you've even fully stood up. Breakfast stew, standard peasant blend, barley, onion, water, and a strong scent of apology. You take a spoonful. It's hot, unforgiving, and probably oversalted by a sleepy apprentice with revenge in his heart. It's hard to explain how this became your life. You once dreamed of being a scholar, or maybe a traveling flute player. Instead, you're a human smoke detector for toxic lentils. You chew slowly. The barley clings to your molars. The onion is raw in places and mush in others. You try not to inhale the steam because last time you did that, your eyebrows smelled like soup for a week. You swallow. Nothing bad happens immediately. So far, so good. Except now, the cook approaches with something new. Oh good, you say aloud, deadpan. He holds up a wooden bowl with some pride. Pickled eel porridge, a regional dish from the coast. You stare at him. He stares back. Historians still argue whether eel was considered a luxury or a punishment. Either way, it's now your breakfast. The bowl is set before you with the care one might use to place a newborn hedgehog on fine silk. It jiggles. You poke it. It pouts. You take a tentative scoop. Immediately, your brain screams, "That's fish in rice pudding." It tastes like the sea had an identity crisis and added cinnamon. It's slimy and grainy and slightly fizzy, which shouldn't be possible. You chew because spitting it out would be frowned upon and possibly punished with another serving. You manage 2 bites before pausing. Your stomach does a little backflip. It's the eel, you think, or the cinnamon, or the overwhelming sense of doom. You close your eyes, breathe deeply, and try to remember what joy used to feel like. The steward appears. He looks concerned. "You okay?" he asks. You nod, the universal sign for probably, but check back in 5 minutes. The cook whispers, "Maybe it needed more brine." You whisper back, "Maybe it needed less existence." And then, like a miracle, you're saved. Not by an antidote, but by the bell, the royal bell. It chimes through the hallways, signaling that the Lord has officially awoken and demands his real breakfast. You stand, shake off the eel, literally and emotionally. You make your way to the silver tasting tray, already laid out. Honeyed oats, soft cheese, bread crusts, and fruit that has been aggressively sliced into obedient geometry. You begin the process. Taste, pause, swallow. Wait, you're methodical now, like a monk with a vendetta against flavor. The bread, dry but not lethal. The cheese, slightly suspect, mildly furry, but not in a dangerous way. The grapes, genuinely good. This, of course, makes you deeply uneasy. You never trust a perfect grape. You finish the round. No symptoms yet. The steward nods. The platter is cleared. The food heads upstairs to its true recipient, who will never know that his life was just narrowly protected by a man still digesting pickled eel slime. You slump back onto your stool. A nap tugs at your eyelids. But just then, the herbalist appears, and he's carrying something bubbling. You groan audibly, because when the herbalist shows up before noon, nothing good is about to happen. Your eyelids are halfway through applying for early retirement when a fork clatters across the stone floor. Instinctively, you sit up, like a squirrel hearing thunder. In this place, every sound is either the start of lunch or the end of a career. A new tray is being assembled, not for nobles this time, for visitors, which means you're about to enter one of the most dangerous arenas in your profession, diplomatic dining. See, when foreign guests arrive, everyone gets nervous. The cooks go overboard. The steward double checks every detail. The herbalist mutters something about regional toxins. And you get to eat a bunch of exotic things that no one here can identify or pronounce. You approach the tray. Smoked trout pate, pomegranate jelly, a thing that looks like a sausage but smells like cinnamon and wet moss. You start with the pate. It's gray, it's soft, it spreads across the bread like a bad decision. You take a bite. It's salty, oily, and tastes like regretful fish. Nothing new, nothing fatal. You move on to the jelly. It jiggles in a way that suggests an unstable personality. You scoop it onto a spoon. It trembles. You tremble. Then you eat it. It's sweet, then sour, then spicy. You cough once. The steward stares. You give the thumbs up. It's fine. Probably. Just confusing. Then comes the sausage not sausage. You cut into it. It releases steam that smells like a wizard's closet and three kinds of despair. The meat inside is dark, dense, and full of tiny seeds. Seeds? That's new. Historians still argue whether seeds were a spice or a warning in early European dishes. Some say they added texture. Others say they symbolized good luck. You say they symbolize choking hazards. You take a bite. It's earthy, nutty, then slightly bitter, then very bitter. You try not to gag. You chew furiously, determined to survive this cursed tube of fermented compromise. When you swallow, a tear escapes your eye. The steward asks if you're crying. No, you say flatly, just remembering something tragic. He nods slowly. You finish the bite. Just one is enough to prove the dish isn't instantly lethal. And in court politics, not immediately fatal, counts as a 5-star review. You sit back down. Your stomach is now hosting a summit between smoked trout, jelly seeds, and whatever emotional residue that sausage left behind. The negotiations are not going well. You try to relax. You really do. But then the steward returns. He has the look, the one that says, I need you to try something, and I'm very sorry in advance. He produces a small ceramic cup. What is it, you ask? He winces. A cordial from the eastern provinces. It's strong. Ah, good. You take the cup. The liquid is thick, almost syrupy, deep red. with flecks of something floating, possibly herbs, possibly bits of bark, possibly the dreams of those who tasted it before you. You take a sip. It's like drinking fire through a flower. The heat spreads instantly, curling up your throat and down into your chest like a warm, aggressive handshake. Then comes the sweetness, then the bitterness, then something that might be pepper or sorrow. You blink. Invigorating, you say hoarsely. The steward beams, then rushes off to report all clear. You sit, stunned, with the cup still in hand. The flavor lingers. It's not good, but it's not the worst thing you've tasted today. That title still belongs to the pickled eel porridge from breakfast. You lean your head back and exhale. You've survived another round, but barely. Your tongue has been through more emotional arcs than a Greek tragedy, and there's still dinner. Of course there is, because diplomacy never ends, especially when there are pies to poison and soups to sabotage. Dinner arrives early, because visiting nobles never stick to schedules, and this particular duke, somewhere between a walrus and a tax collector, has demanded a meal worthy of scandal. That's the kind of phrasing that keeps you awake at night. The kitchen is chaos. Again, the cook is waving a ladle like it's a sword. A young assistant just tried to sear a duck using only candlelight. Someone dropped a bowl of custard, and the resulting splash took out 2 rolls, a half-prepared pudding, and Gregory the spider. May he rest. You step in, exhausted, stomach still waging war with the diplomatic sausage from earlier. Tonight's menu is meant to impress. It includes braised ox tongue in rosewater glaze, spiced lentils with pine nuts and mystery herbs, a meat pie shaped like a castle, complete with pastry turrets, and a dessert, described only as Jewel of the North. You start with the tongue. It looks like a tongue. Not much you can do about that. You cut a slice. It jiggles. It's slick. It smells floral, meaty, and vaguely resentful. You chew. It's chewy, obviously, but also oddly sweet. The rosewater isn't overpowering. It's just enough to make your mouth feel like it's been licked by a very romantic sheep. Historians still argue whether rosewater in meat dishes was a sign of class or confusion. In this case, it's mostly just wet. Next, the lentils. They're served in a shallow silver dish, garnished with slivers of almond and what might be shredded mint. You dip a spoon. The flavor is complex, earthy, nutty, then unexpectedly spicy. Not modern spicy, not jalapeno or chili, but more like someone dared a horseradish root to try interpretive dance inside your sinuses. Your eyes water, you breathe slowly, you do not panic. That's the first rule of tasting. Never let them see your fear. You move to the meat pie. It's massive. Golden crust, flaky edges, steam rising in heroic spirals. A tiny pastry flag waves cheerfully on top, unaware that you are about to dissect its kingdom. You slice in. The interior reveals layers: veal, chicken, something gamier, and a rich sauce that glistens like medieval ambition. You take a bite. It's surprisingly good, which of course makes you very uneasy. Nothing this flavorful comes without consequence. You chew suspiciously, wondering if the sauce contains something exotic, like saffron or crushed beetle shells. You wait. Nothing happens, so you eat another bite. Still alive. You nod. The steward sighs in relief, and then comes the dessert, a jewel of the north. It arrives under a silver dome, which is never a good sign. The cover lifts. Behold, a towering stack of candied dates, sugared plums, honey-soaked nuts, and glistening orange slices arranged in a geometric nightmare. There's a drizzle of violet syrup, a dusting of something sparkly. You poke it. It wobbles. You take a cautious bite. It's sweet. So sweet your teeth wince, sticky, crunchy, acidic, all at once. Then, something odd. A bitterness, not fatal, just confusing. Like someone dipped a sugared almond in cough medicine. You chew slowly, carefully, methodically. Then you pause, and for the briefest moment, you feel euphoric, like your brain just took a deep breath of fresh pine air in the mountains. Then it fades, and your stomach remembers it's still upset about the cordial from earlier. You sip some water, breathe, smile. All clear, you whisper. The staff applauds quietly. The food is carried out to the noble guests, who will now feast on your bravery, garnished with your emotional damage. You retreat, again, to the corner, to the stool, to your lukewarm cup of barley tea, and the quiet hope that no one asks for another surprise dish tonight. You lean back, stare at the rafters. You've eaten rosewater tongue, mystery herbs, 3 kinds of bird, and a dessert that may or may not have briefly elevated your soul. You are tired, not just physically, existentially. Your spoon hand is trembling. Your stomach makes a polite burp that sounds like it's trying to say help. And still, you live. Another meal down, another day served, barely. The feast rages on upstairs. Laughter echoes down the stone corridors like distant thunder wrapped in wine. You can hear goblets clinking, dogs barking, and someone attempting to sing a baritone disaster that sounds like a goat being surprised by a tambourine. You sit alone in the kitchen, chewing on a crust that no one claimed. It's hard enough to sharpen blades. You consider filing it under non-lethal weapons instead of snack. Your stomach? Still alive, which is nice, but suspicious. You've learned not to trust periods of calm. They're often followed by something called court surprise pudding. You stretch your legs. They crack like old parchment. The cook's assistant hands you a mug of something he claims is just broth. You sip. It is, in fact, not just broth. It tastes like someone attempted to boil a tree. You blink. What's in this? He shrugs. Carrot tops, onion peel, a bit of beef? Maybe moss? Maybe. You sip again. It's somehow better than the jewel of the North dessert from earlier, which is either a culinary triumph or an indictment of sugar architecture. A few hours pass in hazy silence. Then the second wave of danger rolls in. Leftovers, not for you, for the dogs. But the steward insists the leftover tray must be sampled before being fed to the noble hounds. After all, these aren't just any dogs. They're prize hounds, important hounds, hounds with better bedding than you. So you, a human with a working, if weary, digestive system, are now tasting food meant for animals who have their own chambermaid. Today's dog tray includes lamb scraps in jelly, stale bread soaked in grease, and something labeled organ surprise. You begin with the jelly. It's jiggling like it has stage fright. The lamb smells lamb-ish. You eat a small chunk. It's cold, greasy, and just sour enough to make you wonder if the dog might file a complaint. You wait. Nothing. Next, the grease bread. It's chewy, oily, crunchy in unexpected places. Possibly because someone dropped it in ash. Possibly because someone meant to drop it in ash. Still, you chew, swallow, survive. And then you reach the organ surprise. You poke it. It flops. Definitely liver. Or maybe kidney. Or the culinary ghost of both. It's dark, firm, and has a smell that triggers primal memories of fear. You take the smallest bite imaginable. Chew. Pause. The flavor is metallic. The texture is defiant. Your teeth consider going on strike. You nod at the steward. All safe. You say with a sigh, that might be your soul leaving the building for a walk. The food is whisked away. The dogs bark in approval. You sit down again and think, not for the first time, that the dogs don't have to taste their food before eating it. They get to just enjoy it. Even if it's terrible, they get to be surprised. You? You don't get surprises. You get suspicion wrapped in pastry. And if you get sick, it's a scandal. If they get sick, it's a bark and a nap. You lie back on the floor for a moment. The stones are cool. The ceiling has developed a second cobweb empire. You miss Gregory. Just as your eyes close, a bell rings. Again, it's the royal son. He's 13, and he wants a snack. He has ideas. Ideas are dangerous. You are summoned once more. The kitchen prepares a plate of wonders. An unholy union of sweet and savory, designed by a boy who once tried to eat jam with a sword. You are handed a sugared duck wing, candied beets with mint, and a slice of cheese dipped in honey. You stare at the plate. It stares back. First, the duck wing. Crunchy, sticky, and so sweet your teeth file a grievance. Then the beets. They taste like sugar-coated betrayal. And finally, the cheese. You take a bite. It is somehow the worst. Historians still argue whether cheese and honey was a delicacy or a prank. Tonight, it is both. You chew. You swallow. You wait. Nothing. The steward nods. The prince may eat, and he does, enthusiastically, without tasting first. Must be nice. You return to your corner. 12 hours in, 8 questionable dishes down, no vomiting, minimal twitching, a personal best. By now, you've stopped checking the time. It's become irrelevant. The day has broken into 2 measurable phases, before the tongue dish and after the candied cheese incident. Everything else is just background suffering. You're vaguely aware that night has fallen again. You can tell by the cold air curling under the kitchen doors, the sound of distant lute music fading into hiccups, and the fact that someone tried to use gravy as hand lotion. The steward appears again. He has a new tray. Of course he does. This time, it's for the visiting bishop, who's requested a light supper, which, in noble terms, usually involves at least 2 birds, some form of pudding, and something drizzled with flower water. The tray includes poached capon with elderberry glaze, parsnip pudding, a soft-boiled egg served inside a hollowed-out bread roll, and a digestive tonic, prepared by the bishop's personal almoner, who once mistook ink for licorice. You begin with the capon. It's tender, slightly sweet. The glaze is thick and purple, like someone tried to turn jelly into a philosophy. You chew slowly, watching the glint of the kitchen fire in your spoon, wondering how many birds have died so this bishop can stay light. Next, the parsnip pudding. It's warm, soft, smells faintly like roasted feet. You take a bite. The texture is creamy. The flavor? Somewhere between carrot and dusty nostalgia. You swallow with the slow grace of a man who regrets both past and future. Then the egg. You stare at it for a long moment, because something about an egg inside bread feels deceptive, like it's hiding something. You break the top gently. Steam rises. The yolk jiggles. You scoop a bite. It's fine. Actually, it's kind of good. The bread is chewy and warm, and the egg tastes like it might have actually been boiled on purpose, not just left near a warm horse. But that only increases your anxiety. Nothing should be this good at this hour. You eye the final test, the tonic. It's in a delicate pewter cup, adorned with a symbol you hope is religious and not alchemical. The liquid inside is clear, faintly yellow, and smells like minty remorse. You sip. It burns. Immediately. Not like fire. Not like spice. Like regret. Like someone took a menthol cough drop and dissolved it in moonshine. Your eyes water. Your ears tingle. Your toes suddenly feel very, very aware of their own existence. You cough. Once, the steward tilts his head. You raise a thumb. Warm, you croak. He smiles. The bishop likes it strong. You nod because that's safer than questioning anything a bishop does after dark. The food is cleared. You slump back into your corner. Again. Always the corner. Always the stool. Your throne of exhaustion. The cook wanders over, rubbing his hands together. Big day tomorrow, he says. You stare at him. What's tomorrow? You ask, fearing the answer. Royal wedding, he says with a grin. Your soul weeps. Weddings mean courses. Multiple courses. Grand platters, roasted swans, towering cakes. Boiled things stuffed inside other boiled things. Entire buffets designed to test the gods. And you get to taste it all, twice. Because presentation and rehearsal apparently both require taste testing, just in case the rehearsal duck is harboring vengeance. You close your eyes and try to imagine a world without sauces, a life without glazes, a morning where breakfast isn't preceded by dread and a light prayer. You can't. This is your life now. You are the taster. The last line of defense. The first to fall, should the stew revolt. And tomorrow? Tomorrow you face the greatest threat of all. Noble wedding food. Which, if history has taught you anything, is less about love and more about layers. Layers of meat. Layers of poison. Layers of pain. The kitchen doesn't sleep on wedding day. It simmers. It sweats. It boils over in all the ways a kitchen isn't supposed to. And you, unfortunately, are right in the center of it. From the moment you open your eyes, on a straw mat that smells like turnips and dreams deferred, you're bombarded by noise. The clash of pots, the shouting of names, someone sobbing into a bowl of custard. The cook is already 3 shades redder than usual. He's barking orders like a general preparing for war. The pastry team is shaping swans out of sugar paste. The butcher is swearing at a duck that won't cooperate. And you're handed a spoon, of course. First up, wedding breakfast for the groom's party. A light spread, they say. You lift the lid. Behold, eggs poached in wine, cheese stuffed dates, a veal jelly molded into the shape of a harp, and saffron pancakes folded like love letters. You begin as always with hesitation. The eggs are soft, warm, and aggressively wine-flavored. Your mouth registers panic, your nose registers vineyard, and your stomach registers a legal complaint. But you swallow, because that's your contract. Next, the dates. They're sweet, then salty, then nutty, then questionable. You bite into a pit someone forgot to remove, and your molars have a moment of crisis. The jelly? It quivers like it knows something you don't. It's glossy, thick, and tastes like cold meat and betrayal. You eat it anyway. Then the saffron pancakes. They're incredible, which makes you deeply suspicious. Nothing should taste that good on a wedding day. Historians still argue whether saffron was truly worth its weight in gold. Based on the emotional journey this pancake just took you on, you'd say, maybe. You give the steward the nod. All clear. He whisks it away, and you slump back, one hand clutching your middle like it's a baby bird in distress. But there's no time, because now it's time for the rehearsal feast. Why is there a rehearsal feast? No one knows. Probably because nobles love eating more than they love each other. The menu includes roasted boar with juniper, baked carp in crust, a tower of savory pastries stuffed with goose beef and ambition, and a salad. A salad. which in medieval terms means raw vegetables under suspicion. You start with the boar. It's fatty, charred, and flavored with enough juniper to make your teeth tingle. You chew with effort. It fights back. Then the carp. It's been baked inside a bread crust that's thicker than your will to live. You break it open. Steam billows out. The fish is staring at you. You remove a chunk. It flakes apart. You chew. It's okay, but the seasoning includes something odd. Maybe rosemary. Maybe crushed antler. You try not to think about it too hard. Next, the pastry tower. You bite into one. It's hot, greasy, delicious. You smile until you hit a hard bit. A bone? A clove? A metaphor? You don't ask. You swallow. You regret. And finally, the salad. Lettuce, onion, and something red that could be beet or possibly a dare. You chew. It's crunchy, earthy, fresh, and you panic. Because fresh means untested in this world. Raw foods carry risk. It might be fine. It might be disaster on a leaf. You wait. Still upright. Still blinking. Still vaguely human. You nod. The steward takes the tray. You lean against the wall. Your knees are weak. Your stomach is a confusing mix of elk, saffron, egg, and hope. But you've survived rehearsal. Now comes the ceremony. And then, the wedding banquet. You're not sure how many more dishes you can physically taste. You consider retirement. You consider fleeing. You consider marrying a peasant and growing turnips in the woods. But instead, you drink a cup of stale water, wipe your mouth with a sleeve, and brace for round 3. Because in a few hours, the guests will scream, "Feast!" and the food will come. All of it at once. And you'll be there. First bite, first symptom, first victim. First to taste. Always. The wedding banquet is biblical. The great hall is transformed into a cathedral of excess. Torches line the walls. Tapestries flutter. And somewhere in the rafters, a nervous dove contemplates whether now is a good time to flee or be roasted. Nobles are filing in, wide-eyed, overdressed, underwashed. The kind of people who think modesty is a soup ingredient. The groom is grinning. The bride is trembling. You, meanwhile, are trying not to burp saffron onto your tunic. The table's grown beneath the weight of food. You spot roasted peacock, its feathers reattached post-cooking, a jelly molded to resemble the family crest, and a pie, huge, steaming, ornate, that may or may not contain an entire orchestra. You approach the tasting table. First course, stuffed dove and violet sauce. You poke it. It jiggles. Doves, you realize, were never meant to be purple. You bite in. The meat is gamey. The sauce is floral and oddly gritty, like someone accidentally used flower petals and the gravel path they grew on. You chew, you wait. Your tongue itches slightly, but that might just be psychosomatic. Next, honey roasted eel with citrus glaze. Why does every wedding have eel? You lift a slice. It slithers off your fork. You try again. The glaze is thick and sticky, like someone melted a lemon drop onto a snake. You chew, it's sweet, then sour, then overwhelmingly eel. You swallow. Your stomach files a formal complaint, but you push through. Then comes the main attraction, the royal pie. It's massive, decorated with intricate pastry patterns, vines, dragons, possibly a mermaid. A golden crust seals whatever horror awaits inside. You slice it. Steam billows out. Inside, layers of rabbit, quail, pigeon, minced mutton, prunes, raisins, cinnamon, and, because the cook was feeling bold, a single boiled egg right in the center like a meaty Fabergé. You take a bite, and your senses revolt. It's everything. Sweet, savory, spicy, gamey, gritty, fruity, confused. Your mouth panics. Your brain files a missing persons report. Your teeth begin drafting their resignation. Historians still argue whether medieval pies were a culinary marvel or an edible dare. You lean toward the latter. You set your fork down. Breathe. The steward raises an eyebrow. You give the nod. Barely. He claps. The pie is declared safe for noble consumption. You lean on the table. Then you notice dessert arriving early. Of course it is. Marchpane swans on a lake of rose syrup. Almond custards in gilded bowls. And the pièce de résistance. A cherry tart shaped like a wedding ring, crust crimped with what looks like actual gold leaf. You start with a spoonful of custard. It's creamy. Too creamy. Sweet, thick, cloying. Your tongue briefly considers retirement. Next, the marchpane. It's almond paste molded into a swan. You decapitate it gently. It tastes like sugar and chalk. A dignified kind of chalk. Rich people chalk. Finally, the tart. You take one bite and pause, because under the sweet cherry glaze, the crust is bitter. Not burnt. Not old. Bitter. Your pulse quickens. You take another microscopic nibble. Same bitterness. You look at the cook. He looks pale. Did anyone else touch this? You ask quietly. He shakes his head. Only the steward, and the bride's cousin, and the herbalist, and that man with the twitch who sharpened the forks. Excellent. You don't collapse, but your throat feels dry. You sip water. You sit. You stare at the tart as if it might grow legs and confess something. Then, mercifully, a noble screams about the music being out of tune. All attention turns. You quietly whisper to the steward, maybe bring something else for dessert. He frowns. Is it dangerous? Unclear, you say, which is all he needs to hear. The tart is removed, replaced by sugared figs and a cake shaped like a goose. You survive the rest of the banquet, but just barely. That bitter crust lingers in your mind. Was it poison? Or just a terrible idea? Historians may never agree. You might never know. You lean on a barrel. Doves are cooing softly outside. You breathe, still alive. For now, the banquet winds down in a haze of burps, wine spills, and nobles telling stories that never quite happened. Somewhere in the background, a lute player misses 5 consecutive notes, then just gives up and plucks at random like he's reading music in Braille. You lean on a crate of onions, watching the last few courses disappear into mouths that don't appreciate the sheer gauntlet each dish has undergone through flame, seasoning, your stomach, and sometimes spiritual doubt. The Lord stands. He raises his goblet to love, to loyalty, to food that doesn't kill you. The irony is not lost on you. As the cheers echo, you make your escape, or try to, but the steward, bless him, curse him, finds you. One last thing, he says. It's never just one last thing. This time, it's theatrical, a performance dish. The nobles are tipsy. The night is long, and the cook has prepared something absurd. A roasted pig with a goose, stuffed inside, then a pheasant, then a quail, and then, because he lost control, a boiled egg. It's like culinary Russian nesting dolls. If each doll came with sauce and a moral dilemma, and yes, you must taste every layer. You approach. The pig's face has been molded into a grin. Its eyes are glazed with something shiny and red. Cranberry? Pomegranate? Guilt? You slice in. The knife carves through pig, then goose, then pheasant. You extract a cross-section. It's pink, brown, white, yellow. It's meat geology. It's deeply upsetting. You chew. The pig is dry. The goose is greasy. The pheasant is stringy. The quail is almost non-existent. The egg is overcooked. Together, it tastes like a dare and a fever dream. You swallow carefully. Historians still debate whether this kind of dish was ever actually eaten or simply displayed. A warning to both animals and ambition. You nod, barely. The steward claps. Again. The crowd roars. You sit. The applause feels undeserved. Your stomach agrees. It grumbles in 5 dialects. And yet, more food appears. Now it's the after feast feast. A table of spiced nuts, crystallized ginger, sugared rose petals, dried pears soaked in wine, and something called serpent cake, made from almond paste and painted scales. You taste the ginger. It sets your tongue on fire in the most polite way. The rose petals, crunchy, perfumed, not unlike eating a very delicate soap. The serpent cake? Too sweet. The almond flavor hits hard, like a hug from someone you don't like but have to tolerate. And just as you're planning your escape again, the nobles begin clapping for entertainment. A jester cartwheels in, and on his tray, more food. A comedy course, he announces. Laughter and livers. It includes candied garlic, onion tartlets, and tiny pies shaped like pig snouts. You eat them. Of course you do. The garlic is crunchy and far too cheerful. The onion tartlet is soft and aggressively fragrant. The pastry crumbles into your lap like it too wants to escape. The pig snout pie, filled with sweet mince and mystery. You take a bite. You regret. The jester winks at you. You don't wink back. You're too tired, too full, too aware that your job tonight was not to die in public. And somehow you've succeeded. You lean on your stool. Your knees ache. Your fingers are sticky with sugar, grease, and questions. Your stomach? It's hosting a civil war between pig, pastry, and poetic justice. And still, you live. For now. As the nobles stagger off to bed, slurring and singing, you finally sink down by the hearth. Your head rests on a sack of flour. The cook pats your shoulder. You did good, he says. You nod, too tired to argue. You close your eyes. But even in sleep, you smell rosemary and duck fat and something that might have been arsenic or just regret. You wake to the sensation of something small and furry licking your face. It's not a nightmare. It's the royal cat, a tubby, self-important creature named Lord Biscuits, who has decided your cheek tastes faintly of fig tart and trauma. You groan and swat gently. He leaves with a tail flick and all the condescension of nobility. Your mouth is dry. Your head feels like it was seasoned overnight. And your stomach, dear heavens, your stomach is still negotiating terms with the stuffed pig and the jester's onion pie. You sit up, bones crackling like firewood. Today's menu? Breakfast. Again. The steward appears before you can even stand. The young princess has requested a private morning meal. Something light, with fruit. Maybe eggs, possibly cake. Cake for breakfast. She's 6. You follow the tray into the prep room. The cook is already there, muttering about spoiled little stomachs and raspberries don't grow themselves. You know, you're handed the selection. Poached pears in honey syrup. A soft cheese tart with a golden crust. 2 eggs, 1 boiled, 1 scrambled, and a slice of vanilla sponge cake with whipped cream and a candied violet on top. You begin with the pears. They're soft, warm, fragrant, sticky with honey and cinnamon. You chew slowly, suspiciously. Your stomach quivers but holds. Next, the tart. The crust flakes delicately. The cheese is sweet, not sour. It tastes like the sort of dish you'd find in a fairy tale, right before the witch introduces herself. You pause. You breathe. Still fine. The eggs. The boiled one is perfect. For once, the yolk shines like morning sunlight. The scrambled one is overcooked, which means it's safe. Dry but reliable. Like your last three pay raises. Then the cake. You hesitate. Because cake for breakfast is a declaration of chaos. You take a bite. It's divine. Soft, sweet, cloud like. The cream melts instantly. The candied violet, crunchy, floral, slightly weird, and then a strange taste. Just a note, something bitter. You pause mid chew. The cook notices. What? Did anyone touch this cake? He shrugs. Only me, the steward, the stable boy, I think, the princess, the cat, probably. Excellent. You wait. Your stomach, to its credit, barely flinches. Maybe it's given up. Maybe it's achieved enlightenment. Maybe the violet was just naturally bitter and not a cry for help. You nod. All clear. The tray goes up. You sit again. But peace is short lived because now it's time for the foreign gift exchange brunch. You'd almost forgotten. Every visiting noble sends a token dish from their homeland, and you, poor stomach mule that you are, get to sample them all. The dishes arrive. One from the cold north, smoked herring on rye, soaked in beetroot vinegar. One from the desert provinces, dates stuffed with cheese, then dipped in saffron oil. And one from a remote island, fermented fish paste wrapped in seaweed, with instructions written in what might be legal threats. You begin with the herring. It's salty, strong, tangy. The vinegar hits your sinuses like a fist made of pickled ghosts. You survive. The dates, sweet, then creamy, then oily. Your mouth slips into chaos for a full 6 seconds, but it's survivable, barely. Then the fish paste. You unwrap it. It smells like history, dark history. You take a bite and immediately regret all your choices. It's sour, slimy, and tastes like the sea decided to go to war with your soul. You pause. You breathe. You do not collapse. The steward claps. You're doing brilliantly. You don't respond. You can't. Your tongue is on strike, and your stomach just sent a strongly worded letter to your lungs. You sip water. You close your eyes. But no, don't sleep. Not yet. Because the mid morning nobles want a tasting board of spiced curiosities. Of course they do. You rise again. Your boots feel heavier. Your spine says rude things, but you carry on because that's what you do. You taste, you wait, you survive, and you pray, however faintly, that dinner is canceled. Dinner is not canceled. It is extended. Apparently, a nobleman from the eastern provinces has arrived unannounced with his wife, his dogs, his mistress, who is not his wife, and a traveling chef who insists on preparing a 7-cent soup to mark the occasion. You're not sure what that means, but it sounds like a threat. You stagger into the kitchen like a tired legend. Your tunic smells like vinegar and goat. Your shoes squish with something you don't remember stepping in. You are, in essence, the physical embodiment of burnt toast in human form. The chef greets you with the kind of enthusiasm that suggests he's never met a food taster before. Ah, you must be the brave mouth. You blink. Is that what we're calling it now? He laughs. You do not. He presents the soup. It's shimmering, greenish. Wisps of steam curl upward, carrying scents that are not compatible. Honey, garlic, clove, fish, cinnamon, cheese. Something you hope is mint. 7 cents, one bowl, your doom. You sip. It's hot. Not temperature hot, emotion hot. Like being slapped politely with a curtain made of flavor. First sweet, then salty, then spicy, then wet. then somehow all of them at once. Your tongue can't process the data. Your brain considers submitting a complaint to God. You swallow, you wait, you breathe, and you live barely. Delightful, isn't it? The chef beams. You smile with the kind of expression typically seen on fainting goats. The steward watches. All clear? You nod, fighting tears. The soup is served upstairs, and you sit again. Your stomach has started to hum, not figuratively, a real audible hum, like it's trying to warn passing insects not to come closer. You lean back, then forward, then back again. Comfort is an illusion. But now, oh now, it's time for the night platter, a tradition apparently. After official dinner, nobles retire to the hall for mead, gossip, and small bites, because what they really need after 3 banquets is tiny food. The tray includes spiced walnuts glazed in something sticky, mince pies the size of your thumb, a roasted chestnut mash with dried fig, and a candied liver cube skewered with a rosemary twig. You try the walnut. Crunchy, sweet, harmless. The mince pie, heavy for its size, filled with mystery meat and 5 spices that argue in your throat, but survivable. The chestnut mash, oddly dry, like someone turned cake into sand and added sadness. Then the liver cube, you hesitate. It's shiny, gelatinous, and smells like remorse. You chew. It is awful, bitter, metallic, and somehow herbal, like a failed potion. Historians still debate whether candied liver was a delicacy or an inside joke among chefs. You cast your vote silently. You signal the steward. Safe, you mumble. He nods and disappears again. You collapse into a stool. You've used the same stool so many times today, it should have your name on it, or your tombstone. Someone hands you a cup of warm barley water. You sip. It's bland, unthreatening, a lullaby in liquid form. You close your eyes and immediately hear your name. The cook returns. He has a jar. You know what's coming. Fermented goat's milk, he says gently, like it's a compliment. For the guest from the mountains. Of course, you take the jar. It gurgles. You remove the lid. The smell is an experience. Your nose recoils. Your eyes water. Somewhere, a fly drops dead. You sip. It's thick, sour, and tastes like cheese that's been to war. You swallow, and somehow, miraculously, your body accepts it or gives up. Either way, you live. Again, you set the jar down and whisper to no one in particular. I should have been a monk. Then you burp, and it smells like soup and goat and 1,000 small regrets. You lean on the wall, you close your eyes. You're still alive, and the night isn't even over yet. Night settles in like an old cat, soft, sneaky, and unwilling to leave. The nobles are either asleep, unconscious, or still debating whether a swan can be legally married to a peacock for decorative purposes. Someone just vomited into a goblet. Another person proposed to a roast ham. You are still standing. Barely. The steward enters. He has that look again. The one that means, I know you haven't died yet, so let's try harder. There's to be a midnight toast, he says too cheerfully, with commemorative snacks. You blink. You've already tasted over 50 items today. Your stomach is a crowded tavern. Your tongue has become a war correspondent. But of course you say yes, because that's what you do. The final tray of the night includes baked apples stuffed with dates and saffron, little biscuits shaped like stars, dusted with sugar and crushed clove, mulled wine steeped with cinnamon bark, dried orange, and something called Bishop's Comfort Root, and a single skewer of roasted hedgehog. For novelty, you begin with the apple. It's warm, sweet, fragrant, The dates add depth, the saffron brings elegance, and the apple has finally surrendered its soul. You chew, you sigh. It's actually good, which fills you with dread. Next, the biscuits. They're crunchy, mildly sweet, and just spicy enough to wake your tongue like a light slap. You like them, which is dangerous. Enjoyment leads to disappointment. You sip the wine. It's thick, hot, and smells like a monastery, and a bakery fell in love. You pause. You drink more. You feel your body relax in stages. Your shoulders drop. Your ears stop ringing. Your knees unclench. Then comes the skewer. You stare. The hedgehog is charred, with tiny spines removed and replaced with sprigs of rosemary. It smells like pork and forest and very bad ideas. You nibble. It's gamey, slightly crunchy, strangely nutty. Historians still argue whether hedgehog was ever truly consumed or simply presented to test social boundaries. You don't care. You chew. You survive. You set the skewer down. Safe, you say, more out of habit than certainty. The steward bows and carries it off. You're left in silence. The fire crackles. The wind moans softly outside. Somewhere in the distance, a lute strings its final sad note. The cook snores into a cabbage. Lord Biscuits, the cat, is curled beside a stack of plates, like a judgmental loaf of bread. You sit on your stool. You don't even flinch anymore. The seat has molded to your existence. You think about your life. You think about that eel jelly, that cursed cordial, that roast with the egg inside. You think about all the things you've survived, all the oddities, all the bites of nearly lethal ambition. Your stomach burbles, not painfully, just thoughtfully, like it's reviewing your choices. You pat it gently. You did good, old friend. You stare into the fire. The embers crackle softly. You're still alive, not comfortable, not joyful, but alive. And in this line of work, that's a miracle. A noble stumbles into the kitchen. He's drunk, wearing half a tablecloth. His hair is dusted with sugar and regret. Anything left to eat? He slurs. You hand him the last biscuit. He smiles. You smile back. And as he wanders off, chewing, humming a tune that sounds suspiciously like a dirge, you close your eyes and you rest, because the next day always comes. And so does the breakfast. You awaken before the rooster, which is rude, frankly, because the rooster doesn't have to eat anything questionable today. The kitchen is quiet, too quiet. Just the faint hiss of embers and the creak of beams settling into their morning stretch. A single mouse darts past with the confidence of someone who knows they won't be put on the menu. You sit up slowly. Everything aches. Your legs feel like bread left out too long. Your back is the architectural blueprint for a regretful bridge. Your mouth tastes like boiled onion and quiet betrayal. And yet, you're upright. Somehow, your tunic smells of broth, wine, goose, and just a hint of despair. A badge of honor, really. You wash your face with cold water from a chipped basin. It slaps you awake, like an honest friend. You pat yourself dry with something that used to be a towel and now may legally be declared sandpaper. Then, of course, the cook appears. He hands you a cup of warm barley tea. No words, just a knowing glance. Today, you're told, is a rest day. But also, there's a visiting knight and his squire, and they brought jerky from the mountains and a new kind of pudding that needs verifying. You don't even flinch anymore. You just nod, because this is what you do. You taste, you survive. You warn others with your eyebrows. You sit down for the night's offerings. The jerky is tough, like chewing a leather belt dipped in pepper and loneliness. The pudding is suspiciously pink. It wobbles. You poke it. It jiggles like it has unresolved issues. You taste it. It's sweet, tart, a bit like overripe berries blended with mystery. But nothing deadly, yet. You give the thumbs up, the night claps, the cook sighs, and you just sip your tea. It's bland. It's warm. It's perfect. Because for once it doesn't fight back. You sit quietly by the window. The light is soft. The sun filters through the grease stained glass like a tired candle. Outside, the stable boy chases a goose. The cat naps in a patch of sun. And in this moment, for the first time in days, no one is handing you a fork with a look of vague apology. You stretch. Your joints pop like old corn. You breathe in deep. And then the steward walks in, holding a basket. You don't even ask. You just stand. Because in this life, this glorious, ridiculous life of chewing for the crown, there is no finish line, no pause button, just the next bite, the next risk, the next oddly sweet meat. You take the basket. You open it. Inside, a muffin. A simple, lovely, modern-looking muffin. You blink. You sniff. You taste. And for the first time, it just tastes like breakfast. The fire has gone out. The kitchen breathes in sleep. The last crumbs of the day have settled on platters and aprons and corners. No one will clean until next Tuesday. You sit alone, shoulders slack, hands folded in your lap. The taste of the muffin still lingers, soft, warm, almost forgiving. You stare at the shadows curling across the walls like gentle waves. Nothing stirs. Not even the cat. Your eyelids grow heavy, pulled down by days of grease and gravy, by nights of waiting and chewing and hoping the next bite isn't your last. There's a silence now, thick and comforting, like a wool blanket wrapped around the world. You breathe slowly, in and out. The pain in your legs dulls to a memory. The burble in your stomach fades to a lullaby. Even the tension in your tongue, yes, that brave, overworked tongue, eases into stillness. Outside, the wind hums against the shutters. The distant hoot of an owl. Somewhere, someone is still awake. But not you. Not for long. You lean back. Your head tilts. The air smells like flour and stories. And for now, just now, you don't need to taste anything. You don't need to nod or chew or guess whether the pudding was a warning or a joke. You just need to rest, to drift, to let go of the flavors and fears and fish pies and fiery cordials. The banquet is over, and you've made it through. Another day, another feast, still breathing, still here, still. You. Sleep well, brave taster. You've earned it. End of script. Sweet dreams.